Okay, everyone, we're back on another three-way chat with two of my favorite guests, Miguel de Guzman, AI safety researcher, and of course, Prof. Ben Teehankee, business ethics professor, and of course, my mentor in all of these discussions. Welcome back, gentlemen, to our conversation.
Hello, guys.
Thank you. Thank you to be back.
Okay. I want to build on our last three-way chat, no, which was well received by the audience. I think Miguel, you wanted to start off by sharing some updates on your work and other things that you want to talk about.
Oh, okay. Let me share something. Hmm, Well, one moment.
In the meantime, while we're waiting, no, I've been having other conversations as well with some AI engineers. I think there's really an opportunity to build a community na ngayon, ano, Prof. Ben, of people
Yes,
who are more proactive about all of this discussion on AI.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm liking the vibe. Eh. It's not doomer at all. No, although we will address the risks.
yes,
But
yes,
people are more, I don't know, positivist. You want to create something as opposed
yes.
to fearing the loss of something. No,
Yeah, there's so much we need to create.
yeah.
So much.
Is it
Okay,
showing now?
sige,
Yeah,
I can see it. Go ahead.
Okay. So it's just some points that I think I would like to share. Um, I'm just this is just an idea from me. Um, I'm I I think there's definitely the case for to discuss this part of the governance agenda that we're all going to be adventuring in a few months. And there is, yeah, the challenge. But I would, hmm, okay. So I won't talk a lot about the conventional challenges na we will be tackling as any technology adoption would be, I mean, encountering. There's tons of material over this. Resistance, infrastructure, we have it as a problem, skills gap, uh, challenges, normal regulatory challenges. Opera, interoperability between corporate, private sector, and the public sector. Those are will be there. But I think the main thing with AI is we're trying to see it in utilizing the benefits of it without a safety standard. So we're trying to make make out of it or become productive as a nation with it without an alignment solution in place. I think this is the core problem that we will be entering in the next 6 months or a year, given that there's no consensus on, or we don't even have a say on how the distribution of AI systems or how it is being even trained upon. So we don't have an alignment solution, and uh, we don't have these standards that we could say that it's safe, fully safe for the country to be using. But we still have to use it. I'm not saying not use it. So that is the challenge broken down in two teams. And I have some questions for the moment that I would like to propose tackling if you guys are interested. Uh, One of the better questions is, do we need a new way to look at these things? It's a new venture that even as I've come across, I think I shared it before also to Doc, that a view of Eric Weinstein is he is not familiar if AI is a capital or a labor. So definitely, if it's not a capital, capitalism doesn't necessarily work uh, on the onset with AI. And consequently, the same concept with labor. So Adam Smith's theory of economics might not work with AI. So it might produce or beg the question that we might be needing new ideas to tackling the AI frontier and regulate it. And if we do need new ideas, there's a case for researching more. Another thing is the new, I mean, a new, how do we best capture this new world we're entering? And especially focusing on human flourishing, as Prof. Ben was really pushing for human flourishing. I'm also 100% on that viewpoint. But how do we capture it properly? I think Prof. Ben in our previous discussion was able to like format it in a way that it is very much easier to understand. But yeah, I'm putting it as a question also. Lastly, we do need the alignment solution to run AI properly at scale. So I'm not sure with this. I'm not sure if the venue for a national trust for finding it is a great route for the Philippines. It's like I'm interested in it because it will make things easier for applying governance policies. But I'm not sure if everybody is. So those are open questions that's running in my head. Uh, and lastly, I just produce uh, like a hypothetical law on since I was able to like see that there is like a mechanic wherein what I'm researching as like a language model is it's showing like evidences of like anything we would want to input to it like a human value core concept. It should be easier for it to like understand and it shouldn't contradict it because it's easy for it to understand or it's easy for it to implement. And if that is the case, this is one proposal. If my claim is true, like if we could really reliably produce AI systems that are like easier to operate with our core values, it might be easier to like implement laws that is like measuring on how easy it is for the AI systems to do it. So, well, this is a theoretical approach to governance. If we do have aligned AI systems, this is what I'm like thinking as of the moment. So, yeah, that's the short or might be short and complex things in my head, Doc and Professor Ben. So, if you want to jump or anything unclear.
Oh, Prof. Ben, what do you think of this?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the way Miguel is framing this because these are important questions. Yung una niyang sinabi, yung new ways of thinking, definitely I agree. Kasi talagang medyo the presence of AI has really stretched the limits of our current ways of looking at things. And I happen to think that the way we look at things today is really extremely limiting. Because if it were not limiting, then there would be more human flourishing in the world, right? So sa akin, that's a truism. We are hostage to our ways of thinking, which is why Einstein won Man of the Century for time, because it was not that he was a genius, it was that he liberated his mind from conventional ways of thinking. Imagine you're just a patent clerk in some office somewhere, working in a basement, and yet you can imagine what happens to time when something approaches the speed of light, right? So meaning he was never really restricted by what was obvious to people. He knew the power of the mind. Now, I was trying to remember my basic economics on the question of the role of technology. Kasi yung classical economics talaga, capital and labor ang input. But I understand that after yung mga mainstream economists, they already have models that incorporates technology and management. In fact, management is seen as separate from labor because management as an input to a process, as we know, includes yung governance, yung organizational design, all of these things. It's not labor that does that, it's really management. Pero I think yung conception ng technology in that original way of thinking did not anticipate decision-making technology. So I can see where the dilemma of Weinstein arises. Definitely, we need to update the types of inputs that go into an organizational process that has decision-making capacity. So in a way, it is agentic, and it will become more and more agentic, right? So
Mm.
yeah, so I think we might really need a new category for that. And because let's say loan approvals or hiring decisions or even jail terms, we know this, right? So if the decision makers simply outsource their judgment to an AI, essentially it was the AI that made quote unquote the decision, but they were acting through the agency of the person signing. That's why the question always is when we're using our smartphones, especially on streaming, social media, whatever, are we controlling the technology or is it controlling us? I think it's already mutual control. Kasi yung algorithmic is already interacting with us and we are interacting with it. So it's like, in systems dynamics, we call it causal. It's a causal loop. It's like when you turn on the faucet and you see the water coming out of the faucet. Are you controlling the faucet or is the flow of the water controlling you in terms of turning off the faucet? It's actually a mutual causality, right?
Mm.
So I think that would be a very fertile area for economists. I wouldn't be surprised if they're already doing these new ways of thinking. In fact, sa management, in the last 5 years, in the Academy of Management Review, which is considered like the pinnacle of management thinking in the world, marami nang lumalabas na fresh frameworks that include AI. So I have to admit I'm not fully caught up in the literature, but the question Miguel is raising is prompting me now to have a look. What are the new ways of thinking of these things? So definitely this is an important question you're raising. Now, as to flourishing, I'm glad you reminded us of this because one of the most promising areas of, and maybe you can input this into your future research, and I can put this in the chat now, is this matter of PERMA plus 4. So in PERMA, if I may be allowed to share, can I share this?
Yeah.
I put it in the link so that you guys will always have access to it. But essentially, what PERMA is saying is that when we
Mhm.
look at work, because remember, guys, even before AI came around, many of us in organizational research believe that the first AI was actually the corporation itself. Because the
Oh.
corporation is a separate entity from its creators. It has agentic properties that are like humans, right? Because we know that a corporation can own property, it can hire, fire, it can enter into contracts, it can even produce separately from the managers, right? But the problem with that is that work inside corporations have become more and more toxic, more and more disempowering. That's why there has been a movement in organizational research to make organizations fit for human beings again. That is why the human flourishing idea has become very popular. So one way of doing that is we monitor how workers are perceiving their work. And the PERMA plus 4 framework is one of those being offered. In fact, I let my students in MBA do this. And the scores are always fascinating for me. For example, yung una, yung positive emotions. So we can just ask, madali naman to, you can even put this in a Google form and ask your friends to answer this. Diba? I feel joy in a typical workday. Because a lot of people say, oh my God, you're already being paid a salary and you even expect to have joy? But, but people are saying, well, joy is a human need. Otherwise, you are a robot. So enthusiasm about the work, loving your job, all the way to the more basic one is sa bottom, yung economic security. This is what I keep saying that a lot of companies are proud to be paying minimum wages, but I always gently remind them that a minimum wage is a poverty wage. It's nothing to be proud of, because if your employees are earning minimum wage, you can be sure they're barely making ends meet. And if they have a family, you can be sure they're very miserable. So the key is, do they really have enough to have a decent life? So yan yung nasa bottom. Now, in the middle, you can see meaning. Now, this is very important. Because, for example, we were asking Miguel before, why do you even do this research? And he said, well, he's been fortunate. He's done some work where he was able to manage his resources, and now he's doing something that's really meaningful to him. Wow, for anyone to be able to say that, to do things because it's meaningful to you. And I feel the same about teaching, and I'm sure Doc here feels the same about what he does. So that's something that all humans deserve to have. We don't deserve to just wake up every Monday morning and look forward to just going home on a Friday afternoon and resting and then doing it again next week. Like a grind. That's not the life we want for ourselves. We want lives that have meaning, we're healthy, we have good relationships of compassion and trust, etc., etc. Now, I was wondering whether in the future we will have, using the approach of Miguel, because he was talking about introducing human values to AI so that AI can understand it, pick it up. I think it would be nice if AI can really be sensitive to human flourishing and really enable humans to make decisions so that they become better persons. I think the idea of automating everything is not healthy. It's really allowing people to have the range of options to do work the way they want, in a way that helps them grow. Because as we know, if we don't have any challenges in our systems atrophy, right? That's why those who go to space, their bones begin to weaken because there's no gravity.
The system.
Our bones look for gravity. Our bones want work. We're not designed to just just be slothful, just like the creatures. So those are my initial comments, and I think Miguel is onto something here. He's raising something, and he goes into that in the second part. Back to you now. For now, Doc.
Sige, my immediate reaction to what you both shared is one of maybe one of three scenarios. One is, do we see AI as just kind of an incremental improvement over what we're doing? I'm not saying the technology isn't exponential. It is, pero a lot of it has to do with how we implement it. If we just implement it as kind of Web 4.0, or kasi we were almost done with Web 3.0, so Web 4.0. So if in that scenario, all it will do is reinforce existing paradigms. So, di ba, I had a question before about we already have a digital divide because of the internet. If we're just going to tack on AI to that, you will worsen the digital divide. Okay, so that's one scenario. Another scenario is we use AI as a breakthrough innovation, but under a totally new paradigm. Parang you're gonna tackle two changes at once. In other words, in the same way you're going to use it, let's say, to improve productivity, you're going to change the rules about how corporations work, about how jobs are designed. So that's the opposite of the first scenario, where one is just an extension, the other one is a complete parang carpet bombing of the whole system. Obviously, that sounds harder than it probably is, no. And then somewhere in the middle is a scenario where maybe in certain fields we can adopt one approach, and in another field we can adopt a more experimental approach. Like, for example, do we see, let's say, generative AI as a way of rebooting education? Because clearly education is already a mess, and now with the addition of this chat gpt stuff, it'll just create more mess. And I can sense schools, writ large, the confusion is, do we endorse it or not, no? So clearly it's ripe for disruption. But maybe in other fields, like kunyari, industrial manufacturing, there's not much to really disrupt other than to lower cost of operation more efficiently, without necessarily resulting in unemployment. So maybe in that respect, it's a bit more incremental. No? That's my immediate reaction. Na parang, yeah, every time you have a massive disruption, technology-wise, I mean, true to the nature of any industrial revolution, it's an opportunity to reboot something. But if we're going to make that argument, wow, no, I don't even know if it can be an argument made organically or it's something that just happens
Yes.
simultaneously. No, like it just emerges out of the blue. No? Anyway, that's just my reaction. No, I don't know, Miguel, what do you think?
Yeah, those, I mean, those are same questions running in my head. Are we the team like who's going to like uh weed it out, like strengthen current paradigms that would work and declare those things that would not work? That's the tall order, right? I mean, we're going to define existing structures since the Industrial Revolution. Those are where, I mean, if I'm looking at it from a pragmatic sense, that I, like my case, I could put it as an example. Like I didn't have the formal structure of like learning alignment. There's no formal structure though. Well, there is, but it's only available for a tiny few select Western, I mean, people for the moment. But in order to like become somebody who will be able to like create more or produce more, develop a meaningful like provide meaning in work, especially in this AI field or like research field. I needed to like navigate this situation wherein I have to learn what I needed to learn. And if it's gonna be a decision between me against old structures or like bad structures, I'm gonna smash the structures and learn it again, or if needed, whatever sticks or whatever is becomes a part of the rubble. So, but the end is a told. But it's still an open question in my head. As if you mentioned, I like how you framed the middle point, wherein it might be a case wherein it will be differentiated in many fields. But if that is the case, Doc, I mean, we need more people on those fields who's gonna be navigating those areas. So it's a problem of teaching, upskilling now these people. Like this tiny, let's say 1,000 people who would be enforcing this. So what are your thoughts, guys?
Prof Ben, ano, sorry to sorry to call the age card, no, but yeah, you've been witness to similar, I don't know, disruption upheavals in the past.
Transitions.
Is there any analogous structure? Let's say, I don't know, when the internet was adopted, when PCs were adopted, post martial law, pre martial law, post war. I don't know. I'm just thinking there should be a way of, in a way, institutionalizing somehow, no, these kinds of changes. Otherwise, we're just begging the proverbial Armageddon ano trigger, no, na we have to wait for some major crisis like the manure crisis, which I love to talk about, or
Mm,
the
mm, mm.
Spanish flu, or maybe we already had the crisis like COVID, which should have been that crisis.
COVID.
I don't know. Any thoughts about what we can learn from past experience?
Yeah, well, there have been many transitions, but in my view, I use really the major metric of human flourishing. In terms of human flourishing, all the past changes did not really address human flourishing. In fact, they sort of assimilated people more and more into an essentially oppressive structure. So the because this is an emergent capacity of capitalist systems, it's not really by design, it's a
But
happenstance.
yeah, true.
So the systems become better and better at sucking value out of the work of people. But to the point of Miguel, the fact that he could autonomously push back on structures is becoming more and more possible now because of digital technologies. So anyone can make his own curriculum, study things, seek out masters, email them and learn directly from them without even, if you love a professor at Oxford, you can email him. You don't have to attend his lectures. You can watch everything he says over YouTube, read his books, email him. You will be in a private conversation with him. But you would not have the credential that a lot of traditional people would look for. So this is already available now, as well as we're all familiar with digital nomads, right? They move from place to place. They live in a minimalist way. They don't accumulate stuff, which is what most people do. So these options are available already because of digital technologies. But what is new with AI is that, going back to the flourishing model, I think it can literally be a game changer in the sense that you're saying it, Doc. In the sense that if we tell everybody what you have the right as a human being to have, which is meaning, good relationships, health, then I still believe AI with the safety features in can now be designed to help you with each of those elements. And then even help you in a very holistic way to look at how you're doing. Because I remember even before in my Palm, I had a PDA, the old Palm Pilot. There were already planners where you put in your goals and your human needs, and then every day it gave you a pie chart. Then it would look at the way you spent your week. Let's say your goal is to spend more time with your. I'm a confessed workaholic, guys. My boys grew up without being close to me, and I paid a steep price for that because now I'm playing catch up. Imagine I'm 61 years old and I'm playing games with my son. I play
Mhm,
computer games with my son because I did not play with him when he was young.
mhm,
And now he has hooked me and I'm playing all of his games. So I don't feel bad about it because I'm making up for time. But I remember that planner before. At the end of the day, it would tell you, you said you wanted to spend this much time with your family. Well, your pie chart is saying you're spending less than one-fourth of the time you committed. You want to do something about that? So that was in the original Palm Pilot. I remember yung Palm Tungsten, if you remember that very old model. But I was tracking that company. It just vanished. The software did not prosper. So I think this is where AI can be a game changer. It can again lay out our options like a smorgasbord and say, look, you have goals. There are things you want to do, improve your relationships, pick up a new skill. For me, I never learned to swim. I always say I will learn to swim. I set aside time for it. And then because I'm a workaholic, I read an article on AI, then I read the article instead of going to my swimming. So I have to say no more articles. I have to learn to swim. So the AI will remind you, you said you wanted to swim. So that's what I want. It gives you the options, but you decide and based on goals that you want. So I think even in manufacturing, because the doc mentioned this, in manufacturing, we can, because that's our problem in our country, right? We're what has been called a manufacturing desert. Other than food and cement and some assembly of integrated circuits, we don't manufacture anything. Uh, if you go to Vietnam, my gosh, the range of things that they manufacture. So what if we can now bring in design skills and then more Filipinos can really design and and
manufacture
then
ideas.
manufacture ideas and then also fabricate those ideas, but in
Mm,
the design level we're not so engaged, especially in the mechanical design. No? We do some design, especially in in fashion, etc. But these are very small in between. To achieve the growth we need, which is 7% growth for at least 7 years, we need an awesome amount of design because only design creates premium value for which you can charge premium pricing. Otherwise, we cannot sustain an economy big enough, which is why 10 million Filipinos have to work abroad. That's why my youngest son will not come home because we don't have enough opportunities here. But if we have AI that can really help us unleash our imagination to come up with products and services that we find meaningful but also improve the lives of others. Wow. So going back to your point, Doc, I think this can really be a game changer. But we have to intervene. Otherwise, as you said, this will just be social extraction to the max.
Yeah, it will just continue the current trend.
Yes, in an exponential way. It's like War
Yes.
of the Worlds. You remember War of the
Mhm.
Worlds, right? The premise is that the aliens came, they really suck people. That's essentially what they do. And right now, that's already what the capitalist system is, in all honesty. But if people are empowered and governments will now help with the upskilling and making resources available, and we have to move towards universal basic income, I believe, because the productivity is so great that there will be enough value for everyone. But the current capitalist model is about value capture, meaning those who have the power will capture it, extract it. It will not be shared because governments try to extract it back through taxes, right? But big companies have perfected tax avoidance. The big tech companies will transfer their headquarters to Ireland because there's no corporate tax.
Mhm.
So there's no shame, right? Even the American senators will tell Apple, "Why are you in Ireland? You're an American company," and they will give all the legal reason why it's perfectly fine for them to go to Ireland. But the real reason is they don't pay taxes there. So
Mhm.
yun ang challenge. Yung how do we deal with the extraction issue? Because that's a huge structural problem. But I'm very excited by the possibility for really rebooting the world of work as we know it. But
Um,
as Miguel said, this will take an all hands on deck approach. It cannot be done just by a few, dreamers like us. It has to really be a huge conversation. That's
I'll give
what I
I'll give
think.
a I'll give a specific example no, of and I don't know the solution to this yet. Kaya nga, I'm interested to hear what AI can do about it. Let's talk about nursing. So if you look at nursing, it's a very strange industry because we have a very high demand for nurses, but they're underpaid. So economics doesn't seem to work there. And there are this is historical, no? In a nutshell, changes in the U.S. Immigration law and also the way the US has basically made it less attractive for Americans to become nurses has created this decades, maybe even a century old industry, panahon pa ni Quezon to eh,
Yes.
where we
Filipino
export
nurses,
nurses.
yes, go
Yeah,
to
di
the
ba?
US.
Panahon pa ng
Mhm.
mga ng
Mhm.
ano yan,
Mhm.
pre-war and then
Mm.
post-war
Yeah.
Was
to the point that you now have multi-generational Filipinos who are descendants of this structure and perpetuate it. They are the ones who are now actively recruiting nursing graduates, and there's now this almost parang permanent funnel if you're a nurse. And then back home naman, it's so lopsided that despite the high demand for nurses, if you wanted to get work experience as a nurse, you even have to pay a hospital. It's just so strange. You have to
Yeah.
pay a hospital. They won't pay you unless you have
Mhm.
experience. So talagang and we saw this detrimental effect on us during COVID, where we had a high demand for healthcare workers to the point that the government, I think, briefly banned any nurse from leaving the country, which is more bad PR, no, after bad decisions. So, okay, if we add AI to that, what happens, no? Who will acquire AI? You can look at it from the perspective of the hospital. What are they going to do? Are they going to automate the nurses out of the system, or are they going to augment existing nursing? Or you can look at it from the perspective of the nurse. Maybe it improves the way they learn nursing, makes them more competitive. But that, given the current system, that will just accelerate their exit from the Philippines and make them more attractive abroad. No, and the U.S. is only one. There's a whole suite of other European and something countries who are ready to accept nurses. In fact, the point system in most immigration scorecards gives a
Yeah,
high weight. So that's
definitely.
what I mean. Na parang if we're gonna fight that, and I don't know when AI will break into nursing, maybe it's already happening.
It's already
We need to
happening.
really re-engineer the whole nursing system.
the whole thing.
The whole thing. Otherwise, it will just
Mhm.
drain more nurses out
Yes.
of the country.
Yes.
That's my speculation. Anyway,
Mhm.
I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, you chose.
Ikaw, Mig, sige, Sir
Sige.
Ben, go ahead.
Well, you chose a perfect example because I've just been invited by a national nursing institution precisely during their conference in October to share my thoughts on this. But the example you shared is really one of the saddest structural extraction problem our country has. Our nurses, many of them serve double shifts. No? By the way, in the Philippines, a nursing shift is 12 hours. It's not 8 hours. And some of them serve back-to-back shifts. So if you observe them, because I've observed them when I was with my wife after my second child, there are times when they're like walking zombies, you know. And you're right, because of the way they're underpaid, it's adding insult to injury. And when more and more of the big conglomerates took over the ownership and management of the biggest hospitals, this was just aggravated. Because the income model of many hospitals is from testing. You go there, you get confined, and the testing model. I mean, this is not talked about, but the doctors are encouraged to have tests because that's where you know
It's where the commission is.
that's where the hospital makes income. Let's put it that way. Of course, they will not out and out say, it's just like doctors prescribing. They're not really told that you have to prescribe more. But it would be nice if you do. So the pharmaceutical companies are happy. This time the hospitals are happy because they get more income from every test, right? So, but where are the professionals here? And I'm not just talking of the nurses, even the doctors feel the pinch. So because of that, you're right. Why is it that the people who give us the most essential services for our health are the most deprived? Because they are trapped in a system, and those who should know better, instead of improving the system, actually make it worse. And I'm glad you're talking about this because very few call this out. Very few call out this system. We accept it. So much so that I remember in the 90s, there were so many diploma mills in nursing that popped out of nowhere. And then you remember they even sued the CHED commissioner at that time. I'm trying to remember. In the 90s, I think it was Father De La Rosa of UST. The nursing schools were being shut down one by one by CHED because they were really diploma mills. When you look at
Yep.
them, they don't even have equipment. They would train you on the anatomy through paper dolls. They would not even spend on cadavers.
An actual
So
cadaver, no?
yeah, it was a big joke. And there was a time when some countries literally banned our nurses because they found out that they were not really trained, so to speak. These are issues. Even in maritime, sometimes the government has to step in because some maritime schools are also substandard. And this, as you know, is a safety issue because we have, I think, 60% of
The
commercial
world, the
marine
world
workers in the world,
in
right?
the world. Yeah.
So that's really an issue, and it has to be called out. But we have to remember that there are deeply entrenched commercial interests in this system,
For sure.
and some of them involve politicians, generals, etc., who are acting behind the scenes so that the system continues the way it does. So it's like the Matrix, no? Humans are used as batteries, and you don't know any better. So, but what you're saying, Doc, makes us take the blue pill, so to speak. We have to open our eyes and really look at human beings and say, "Are you okay? Are you getting what you need? Right? Because you deserve it." And then for organizations, tell them, "Look, we have to take care of these people. Otherwise, the exodus will continue, and we get substandard work here in our country, and our culture becomes decimated because more and more leave. We need all of this talent to stay here so that we can achieve that 7% over 7 years. Not in the UK. Although I'm always proud when our nurses are given awards everywhere. Yeah. In the UK, they were given a special award during the pandemic, if you remember.
Yeah,
So that's
certainly.
a
Yeah,
that's a
the
perfect
performance.
example, Doc, of the problem.
Yun nga, and it's only one of many.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
To, to,
course.
to, to toss another one. This is a completely different, ano naman. We should be writing these industrial speculations down, to be honest. So if you remember when Uber came and disrupted taxis, no, and that's a clear, parang analogy now of AI disruption. People flocked to Uber, like me, because it was certainly a step up from your average taxi ride. It was
Taxi drivers.
predictable.
Mm,
Despite the surge price, you can even get lower fares. The
mm,
quality was good. It provided informal employment to drivers. So win-win-win. Okay. Now, there were two, in a way, downsides to that. Number one, because as you talked about commercial interest, the taxis were commercial interests. Some of them are owned by politicians. So there was the emergence of the pushback there. And secondly, something that companies like Uber and now Grab have to contend with, they're skirting labor law, no, by providing informal employment without benefits and all that. And the idea there was they didn't have to because they're a platform. So this is an example, Miguel, of a new way of thinking, no, a platform economy. Pero we have like fundamentals about current economy that kind of take precedence also now. Okay, fine, it's a platform. Both the driver and the cost and the rider are customers, if you think of it that way. But you can also look at it from a completely different perspective. The drivers are your employees, or in a way, your freelancers. So you owe them some sort of protection, no? That's not afforded by a platform economy. Anyway, long story short, we know what happened. Uber got kicked out, but that was also partly a commercial decision of the owners of Uber, who are also the owners of Grab. So they just decided to split the world between Grab and Uber. So you're either a Grab country or an Uber country. So that's one chain of thought. The other chain of thought is the taxi owners, who are also politicians, people in power. Syempre, they don't want to disrupt their income. That's how Joyride emerged, no, as a competitor to Angkas, for example. No? So, and then there's the third chain of thought about the benefits of the people who are driving. And then finally, the consumer experience, which in all cases got worse. So not only are we paying astronomically high bills on average because of Grab, the ride quality is not the Uber quality I remember. And the drivers aren't earning as much. So for me, like, where did the whole thing go wrong? Because it would have been such a
Yeah.
promising model. The whole thing
Well,
just got corrupted, no, if you think
yeah.
about it. No?
I'll have my take on that. And
Yeah.
again, you raise a perfect example. I think this is an example of an alignment problem
Mm.
because the original goal became providing the ride efficiently, reliability, and
And
cheaply.
cheaply. Yeah.
However, the whole process bypassed the well-being of the drivers. This is the problem. Because every time a company will say, oh, but we're a platform, we don't cover benefits. This is really a backdoor trap to, again, evading the issue of human flourishing. Because it is so easy, I submit that it is so easy to track human flourishing. Even during the pandemic, you can look it up. The number of online orders surged 5 times in Korea, and some of their delivery personnel died from overwork, heart attacks, and so on, because the delivery companies took advantage of the revenue and gave incentives to the delivery people to deliver more. So delivery personnel will leave the house at 4 a.m. and deliver as much as they can. They will go home at 11 p.m. and do that again the next day. And they will drop dead on the fourth day. And they had no protections, none at all, because after all, they were earning the income, right? But you cannot use your income when you're dead. That's why labor laws are there to protect the person even from overworking because he will kill himself. The system just becomes okay. Every time you deliver, you hear a ping. That means you got paid. So why not deliver one more and then deliver one more? But we know what that is. That's workaholism, right? It will kill you. So to your question, Doc, what went wrong? What went wrong was a classical alignment problem. The system was designed for efficiency. It was not designed for human flourishing. And this is the problem with the capitalist system. Because in the case of Korea, they already had the technology that all of their drivers, they can track them for blood pressure, for heartbeat, for perspiration. You can put sensors on the body of a, you would know already that this guy has to rest. But did they do that? No, they did not. All they tracked was whether there was a delivery. And therefore, the system, and I think Miguel would be the expert, you have the internal alignment issue. The system aligned for maximum delivery and started killing drivers. And the drivers were not organized, so they did not have a union, etc. So they did not have the rights under the labor law. So we will see more and more of this until we realize that all systems have to be aligned towards human flourishing. if we don't do that, everything else will come back to the same story, the same dystopic matrix story of finding out how to extract more and more from our fellow men when actually they're human beings, whether they're nurses, Uber drivers, etc. While those who have power, capital, and political influence will be in the background, just extracting. It's really social extraction. So, magandang example. Again, that's a perfect example of what can go with the original alignment problem. I wonder what Miguel thinks of this.
Hmm. Uh, Very good analogy, Prof. Ben. I mean, and it's a good thing Doc raised this. I mean, this is the things that I love with these discussions. I mean, it brings some great things in my head that I haven't thought of. Like, yeah, there's a case where the human alignment problem in the systems that we're using currently would become a bottleneck with this AI era. I mean, so it's like the way I'm understanding it now. It doesn't matter how good the technology is if we ourselves will not be aligned to utilize it properly. I was thinking, like suggesting earlier with the nursing problem, like it it might be a case that we could institute laws to like secure a redistribution program of like, let's say, a certain economic evolution would improve productivity in certain areas, and then such productivity will be translated to enabling natural services that this country requires, like healthcare, food distribution. But for that to exist, we need a human alignment solution first. I mean, if like what Doc said, like the implementation of Uber was really good, and then it got cut off in the middle because certain interests of certain groups of people, like yeah, owners, capitalists, governments, taxi drivers, even, were touched. So yeah, that might be the core or crux of the problem that we might be needing navigating in the next 6 months to a year or 2 years, because it doesn't matter what solution or how good the solution is. How we could implement it is another problem that is layered with the alignment thing, human alignment.
And
Yeah,
ano, so to
my
interject,
follow-up question to
sige, go ahead,
Miguel,
Prof.
Doc,
Ben.
if you don't mind, because I'm trying to do some cross-pollination. Because I've been dealing with the alignment problem in the corporate world for a very, very long time.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if there are insights from the AI alignment field that can cross-pollinate into the corporate governance alignment field, because management as a field is a shameless borrower from other fields, especially from the natural sciences. You hear managers talking about synergy, catalyst, ecosystem. All of this is borrowed from the natural sciences, right? And we also borrow from military strategy, and so on and so forth. Uh, do you see any insights, Miguel, on how your research in AI alignment is progressing, or what you've seen as the work of others that can improve this very difficult problem of corporate governance alignment? No matter what the government does, it adds a layer of laws. It makes the next round of scandals even worse because the human agents find a way around the law to come up with even worse shenanigans than the last one, which is what we fear AI will do, right? It will generate sub objectives that we did not intend, which ends up biting us in the butt. So, what are some of your insights there, Miguel?
The only thing is it might be easier to like align AI systems if we do have the alignment solution. Huh? It might be easier to manage AI systems than humans.
Mm.
That's my understanding of it. The way you're encountering it in the corporate world, it is really difficult. I have my fair share of like dealing with the the complexity of each of us. I mean, 7 billion of us have, or 8 billion of us have our own peculiar thing on many things. We just happen to like be like bounded by certain, like we're bounded by our need to eat, our need to sleep, our need to do primal stuff. But yeah, the only difference is we don't have the alignment solution yet. That's why I can't claim that it's fully easier for to manage AI systems. But if we do, it would be easier than managing humans, I would say. So I don't know if that's a clear-cut addition to your problem or the thing you're encountering, Prof. Ben. But I actually agree with your problem. It's a
Yeah,
very difficult problem to manage.
yeah. I remember Jeffrey Hinton when he left Google. You remember he left Google, right? Because he said
Yes.
he wanted to speak openly about the AI threat, and he said in some ways AI is much better than humans because the moment it learns something, it can instantly share that learning to hundreds, thousands, even millions of copies of itself everywhere. Now, this is also happening in corporate governance. When there is a malpractice in the US and the US government cracks down on it, that malpractice becomes replicated in another country where there is no law against it yet because it
Mm.
takes a while for the law to catch up, right? So this is true with environment. For example, when I was in Japan as a visiting professor, the Japanese students were telling me, look at this list of Japanese companies. All these Japanese companies cannot violate environmental laws here because they are banned from doing that. So all of them set up factories in your country. They told
Mm.
me. And sure
Mhm.
enough, this is an impressive list of Japanese companies. And he told me they set up factories in your country because their practices will not be approved here. So but with AI, Hinton was saying, the moment it learns, and there are parallel agents learning everywhere, the moment they learn, they instantly share what they learn. And then they learn together. So, kumbaga, no match, right? So malpractice spreads much faster. So in some ways, that's one of the things that keeps me up at night because I've always been worried about corporate malpractices spreading around the world. Now, to think of AI malpractices, if that's even a proper term, moving around the world, that keeps me up at night. So back to you, Doc.
Sorry, I was on mute. In a way, I think since I kind of sit in between the two of you, no, si Miguel's looking at very micro algorithmic risks, while Prof Ben looks at kind of macro. I think there's a very direct correspondence, which is both are susceptible to design flaw.
Mm.
So in
Sure.
the same way, a misdesigned algorithm, it's going to be hard to fix unless you're able to stop the algorithm. And I think that's part of your research, diba, Miguel, the corrigibility test. Can you shut it off? In the
Yeah.
same way, the macro risks, if it's designed the wrong way, it's going to be hard to shut down also. So there's a corrigibility issue also with the macro issue, like what's happening with the nurses. You can't shut that off right now. No? What happened to Uber, and now with Grab, that took a concerted effort to really shut down and regulate. And then what we have now is a less than perfect system. There is a concept in AI safety, and I'm only beginning to scratch the surface here, no, having talked to Miguel, of balancing safety and capability. So, for
Mm,
example, the more capability you give to a system, it attracts basically risks. So there's a it's not linear. There are times when you get capability without too much risk, and the other way around. You
mm.
attract so much risk for
Interesting.
a
Mm.
modicum of capability. So I think in the micro in the micro world of algorithms, it can be as simple as, do you give the algo access to the internet? And
Mm.
now it does. And
Yes.
that attracted a lot of risks, all the way down to what kind of basically what kind of API and what kind of software do you give an algorithm access to, no? What kind of automation do you give it? Now on the macro version of it, the same applies, whether it's a corporate structure or a public sector structure or a new regulation. In a way, you're giving capability. Like when
Mm.
we enabled
Yeah.
BPOs, that's a
Yes.
capability. We said, okay, no more ownership, foreign ownership cap. Okay, capital flowed in. But without adequate analysis of what safety concerns, and sometimes it's hard to speculate. Like for example, I'll focus on a small minutia issue, which may arguably is not the higher than average incidence of HIV in the call center population.
Mm.
Why? Because they have a very different culture, very different lifestyle, and they're exposed to Western, liberal ideas,
And they have the cash flow, Doc.
and they have the cash flow, and they're not
Resources.
their personal lives are not supervised because they're
Mm.
asleep when their parents
Mm.
are awake, and the other way around. So do you think the people who drafted the call center industry ever thought about that? So yun
Yeah,
yung issue
yeah,
parang
yeah.
so there's the safety capability ratio, uh writ large and writ small, but then it boils down to basically an inadequacy in our ability to assess a risk.
Mm, mm,
It's probably just because there's no one actually who's doing it, or no one is tasked to examine these alignment issues. Like the field of Miguel is so niche even within the computer science community.
mm,
You
mm.
can, there's less than 200 people doing it. What more pa these macro risks? In theory that should be economists, right? Pero I
Mm.
can't say for sure
Yeah.
that they're looking at it. So those are
Well,
kind of the correspondences I'm seeing of
yeah,
where these two things seem to align.
yeah. I like the way you phrase that. In fact, this is why I like conversations like this because that's why I'm for cross pollination. If there are issues that has not been experienced in one field, we can actually cross to another field and learn from what they have learned in that other field. Because for those who committed those policy design disasters, they, for example, in 2001, I believe it was, Enron had one of the biggest collapse, no, because of their trading and their accounting practices. But you will remember shortly after that time, that was when we passed the EPIRA law. The EPIRA law deregulated power in the Philippines and created the spot market for electricity. The promise was, and this was a huge promise, guys, because we have the most expensive electricity in
Mm.
the region. That's why they don't want to set up factories here. And they said, well, why don't we unleash the power of the free market so the prices will go down? And so the EPIRA was passed. We privatized everything end to end, including transmission cables, generation, distribution. You know, in some countries, they privatize everything except the transmission. The transmission lines are still owned by the government. In our country, we privatize
Prioritize everything. Mm.
everything. And then we created a spot market with the promise that prices will go down. Excuse me, look at the ranking of power cost in this region. We still have one of the most expensive. And yet, the utilities and all the companies are making a lot of money in power. Okay? So, why did that happen? We already saw the problems of Enron and the way Enron was manipulating the market. And then we did it here. In fact, I had a conversation with one of the commissioners of the uh, Power Commission, the ones who approve the Energy Regulatory Commission. And this goes to your point, my Doc, about economists. A lot of the economists really believe in the free market principle.
Mm.
They think it's almost like a magical formula that solves all problems. But we in the behavioral sciences know that that same market is open to manipulation. It's one of the most basic things that we know about human intention. You
Mm.
give them any opportunity, give them the rules, they'll find a way around the rules while appearing to follow the rules, right? So nothing surprises me that even when you have our companies can create false what do you call this false shortages so that prices will shoot up and then when
Artificial scarcity.
yeah artificial shortages because the law in the market is that if you're an approved provider, just imagine a palenque. You rent a stall, right? So the palenque management says, okay, there are 10 fish stalls, so you have to open your stall every day. If there is a day that you don't open your stall, you are causing a lower supply, right? That will jack up prices, of course, right? So they penalize you if you don't open your stall. The same is true in power. if you have a quota to deliver to the grid, and if you don't deliver it, the PSALM, I think it is. This is the body that oversees the power generators and tells them, are you following the rules? But just think of FIBA in basketball or whatever, FIFA in football. They're the ones who give you a yellow card or whatever, and then they fine you because they said if you don't put the power into the grid, the price of the power offered by all the other players will go up. And then therefore that's open to collusion, right? Somebody can say, oh guys, baka naman you can schedule an unscheduled breakdown of your equipment on Tuesday, mga ganyan, which is what Enron was doing, by the way, guys. They were artificially causing shortages so that they can jack up the prices. So that means uh, our challenge is if you design a system, how do you protect it from gaming, manipulation?
Gamification.
Manipulation. And this is where knowledge is so important. People have to really be vigilant and call it out. And then if there is I mean, in the future, like what is the name of our guy, Elizar? You were telling me
Yudko-
about him.
Yudkowsky.
Yeah, he's the one saying there will be a global authority that will control AI in control data centers so that if you see North
Mm,
Korea,
mhm,
getting an algorithm, you can even empower militaries of governments to go in there and
mm,
well, he was going to an extreme, right? Like bombing data centers because you know that a rogue power has taken it over, a la Mission Impossible, right? Dom? So, but the point is still a good point. What will be the regulatory structure so that our vision for AI, which is to support human flourishing, will not be hijacked by people who just want the benefits to accrue to themselves? Because this remains an insoluble problem even in the traditional
mm,
corporate world. That's why I keep looking for self-regulating ideas from nature because nature has a way of regulating itself,
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
whereas
mhm,
humans have a unique way of becoming more and more crazy.
I don't know nga if
Hmm.
it's a good point you brought that up, no. And again, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but some people argue pandemics are a self-regulation
Hmm.
mechanism
Hmm.
just to reduce humans, no. Another angle that I have yet to scratch the surface on, because certainly within the Philippines as a societal complex system, there are these inefficiencies. I tend to put less credit on any uh imputation of malice, like intentional harm. I don't think people actually do that by default. There are a couple
mhm,
of crazy people for sure. It's more of unintentional harm. So when
Hmm.
people think they're doing the right thing, SIM card registration is the
mhm,
most
mhm,
recent example, and then now
Hmm.
we created the black market in SIM cards.
Hmm.
Exactly like that. I'm sure legislators aren't just having a field day coming up with all these crazy rules. Another one I saw recently is um, motorcycle riders, drivers are no longer are banned from taking shelter underneath flyovers during the rain.
May
and
actually have banned that, no?
MMDA has this parang I don't know if it's an ordinance or
Ordinance.
something.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna comment about it. And then they had the point about street vendors are likewise banned because in the first place they don't have a permit to sell. So I'm thinking, okay, fine, permit to sell or not. Do you need a permit to take shelter from the rain?
Yeah,
What kind
yeah.
of
It's a yeah. Health
tyrannical society
health is
needs?
a human right.
Oh, so anyways,
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
take
Mm,
that as a given.
mm,
Unfortunately,
mm,
when you overlay geopolitical discussions on this, it just gets worse because now we have an de facto monopoly on AI by Silicon Valley,
mhm,
and all I see here will be an acceleration of the global north, global south, which those
mm,
I hate those
mm,
terms by the way. But anyway,
mm.
the acceleration of the global north,
The
global south
divide, the
relationship,
divide,
yeah,
yeah.
and we're seen more as a consumer of services provided by global north. Yeah, no, I mean that's why I feel that while we're solving for alignment here, there should at least be a concerted effort to broadcast views where we are strong. Like certainly we can weigh in as a country that supplies OFWs, nurses, engineers, seafarers. We can weigh in as a call center capital of the world. So if you think about it, we're like the proverbial labor force for
Mm.
many
Mm.
countries
Mm.
who are also being excluded. And this is just a kind of a microcosm of the
Yeah.
typical labor relationship between labor and management. Labor is not consulted. So
Mm.
we I think we owe it to ourselves, being such
Yeah.
a country, to step that up and have a perspective on it. Because I
Yeah.
think we over glorify then the issue of alignment, in the sense that we think it sounds harder than it really is. I feel that because much of it is just reinforced by current status quo, our current structures. If we removed all of these impediments, we can just start to argue, okay, if it harms a human being, let's not do it. Or
Mm.
if it prioritizes economic gain over human flourishing, which is a macro version of the capability safety ratio ni Miguel, then let's not do it. Or there's a threshold at some point that we rule that out. But even at that level, we don't know who to appeal to. There is no authority. Even
Mm.
globally, there is no authority. And the only authorities that exist at the global level, the UN, the ICC, and all these supranational structures,
Mm.
were
Mm.
themselves outdated outcomes na, because they were based on World War II, basically.
Mhm, mhm.
And that predates all of these new technologies. So I feel that even they need to reboot. No, um, why does WHO still exist?
Mm.
Shouldn't we have cracked the whole problem of no, global health? I mean, these UN agencies were formed because the whole world was devastated during World War II, and someone
Mm.
had to
So,
bridge the
rebuild.
the
Mm.
rebuilding. No,
The rebuild, yeah.
we're done with that. It is a new problem we have now. The whole thing has been rebuilt, but it's crumbling from within. There is no
Yes.
UN equivalent for that, no. So I feel that's a perspective that needs to be brought out.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's a well, these are layers and layers of
Yeah.
structural issues. But I like the fact that, as you pointed out at the start, Doc, that citizens who are concerned can have conversations like this, put it in social media, and generate a level of pushback. Because when we wait for the formal authorities to get their act together, it really takes a long time because there are treaty conventions, there are toes they don't want to step on, and of course, legislation really takes a long time. But the nice thing is, as citizens who are concerned, and I exercise that, right? In the case of ChatGPT saying wrong things about me, I exercise direct pushback. And I think if we can just magnify our voice to say, let's accelerate, if we cannot stop doing something because it's unsafe, for me, the minimum is you have to disclose the risk because that's already covered by existing law. Any product already in the law on sales, there is always an implied warranty against hidden defects. That's already embedded in law. That is both in civil law and in common law, which
Consumer
is
Act
why,
also.
and it's also in the Consumer Act, but it's also in the basic law of sales. So that means if I use your product and then you did not disclose that's why there are product recalls. The issue with AI is how do you recall this now? You released it into the internet. It's not like a car or the Samsung Note 7, right? Remember Samsung made a total recall of Note 7 because it had an exploding battery. Of course, the Filipino, some of them kept it, as a memento. They did not give it back, and they would violate the airline. The airlines banned people from bringing in a Note 7, but the Filipinos would sneak it in anyway. So that's the thing. How do you recall if in the first place the defect is not admitted? Because in the case of Samsung, they admitted it right away. There was a problem with the battery. So they had a total recall of the Note 7. But here, even though the tech companies say to the government, please regulate us, they have not issued any admission of the problem of the early release of these LLMs into the internet. There has been no admission. I think there are already class suits being prepared. there are already individual suits, by the way, being prepared. There was this Australian guy who already sued OpenAI, I think, because ChatGPT was saying he was convicted of a crime. And
Mm,
it turned out he was not convicted. He was the whistleblower in the case. You get it? But because ChatGPT saw patterns where he was always being mentioned, it did not make a distinction between the whistleblower and the convicted suspect. There you go. It was a major incident of hallucination. But this guy wasn't taking it sitting down. He sued. Now, I don't know if that will prosper or what most companies will do. They will settle out of court with no admission of fault, guys. They will
mm,
pay you off and you
Without
sign
admitting they made a mistake.
without admitting fault, and they will make you sign that you will not raise the issue again.
Yeah.
mhm.
But at least you walk away with 1 million, maybe 2 million, and then you don't bother them anymore.
Yeah.
But how
But
does that help the others? Miguel, what do you think?
oof, um, I see this is a good thing we're discussing this. I see two things that should happen in this new AI era. I'm seeing the need to like improve the knowledge of the certain demographic that would like instigate start the fire of adoption of AI. And also there's this thing that we need to improve also the the thing that would manage the adoption. May that be a new form of system. I'm open for a new form of system. It could be a government thing, it could be a private, public partnership, whatever that system that will protect this people who will like do this adoption.
Hmm.
I think we need both of it rolling to us to the right direction. It shouldn't be one only. It shouldn't be
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
the system. I think both of them should move into the proper places, and that might be the challenge for us in the Philippines.
Yeah, I think
I
that's where
yeah,
I'm interested, Miguel, in your activation, in your AVMT system, because you're saying that maybe one way is to monitor the token activations, right? And
mm,
then, could you tell us the story? How will this work out? This scenario that you're envisioning for the alignment problem.
if my research is what you call this why I'm saying this way because I'm the only one who's that well most researchers in the alignment field are in like for companies that are properly built wherein there are layers of reviews on what output
Mm,
they get.
mm,
I'm an outsider to this, so I don't get proper reviews with my work. So
mm,
all I could say is put it into the public forums, and maybe people, if they get to be interested, they will be able to like see if this is worth discussing or reviewing.
mm.
So I don't have that technical capability for the moment to review my work. So, but having explained that part and why I'm saying if my claim is true.
Miguel, before you continue, because I
Mhm.
always want to learn about your world, does that mean, for example, when the people at Google Labs publish the attention is all you need article, the GPT thing, was that reviewed or was that open published? How does that work? Was that reviewed?
Uh, there's different mechanics to it. Having seen that 2018 paper in RCIV, RCIV has its own thing also of reviewing.
They
Uh,
review.
yeah, they
Okay.
have their own what you call this independent people who will review papers submitted
Mm,
to the RCIV
okay, okay. I get it.
research platform. There's ResearchGate, there's L forget
Mm,
Elsevier something. So there are
mm,
different things on top of universities, prestigious universities doing their publications. So there's different dynamics to it. Even I believe Google, Meta has their own thing. Sometimes they use these platforms. I've seen Meta doesn't use most of it. So there's no uniform. way of doing it
It's
for
it's
AI
it's
in
not
some
like ano
sense.
eh. It's not like the journal system.
Yeah.
Parang
Yeah,
ano.
I'm not familiar with it kasi. But you raise an important point, no? This matter of review. Yeah, that was just my question. Sorry. Yeah, you can go.
Okay, so my analogy currently is not yet reviewed like this
Mm, mm,
bigger or top four safety research institutes in the world. But my claim is I've observed evidences that the AI is can be trained on certain instructions that it would allow it to activate less on its understanding of the instruction.
mm,
And the understanding of mine is the analogy that I gave in my the paper I or the post I did with this documentation of the evidences. It might be similar to the way we learn new things, like learning how to play the guitar. At first, we're devoting tremendous resources neurally to understand how to mechanistically operate the right hand and the left hand and how the tunes work. But over time, we get to think about how the left and the right and the tunes work because we
mm,
get to be familiar with the structure as and hence it's giving us less activations on our neural structure. That's what I'm trying to like gain with as a perspective or
mm,
like show as a perspective to what my the result of this initial or preliminary research is. And it might be that a feature that we need to put into AI systems is something that it's too easy for them to execute. They won't question it because it's easy. And now, if that is the case, we could enforce now. The governance will be easier if we have this
mm,
certain alignment
mm.
theoretic that we could ground governance procedures.
It will be like
Um,
an audit framework, no?
yes, it will be auditable. It will
Auditable.
be easier to train people who will do the audits. Government
Mm.
bodies will be easier to like discuss with. Hey, this is an aligned system that we all agree in the world that will be activating this certain amount of like neural structures.
So how far along are you in experimenting with this idea?
I'm on my second stage, Professor Ben.
Very interesting.
I'm doing an analysis of all tokens that has the name human
Mm.
in the model I'm studying. I'm
Wow, this is
curious
fascinating. Mm.
what it thinks of us.
Yeah.
So that is this is fascinatingly I'm astonished. 52,000 tokens. We
Mm.
have 19 tokens that has the word human. In my initial review,
Oh.
there's less activations with the word human in a provided prompt that I gave, and that got me curious. What is? I thought it was just three tokens that compose us, and now there's 19 tokens.
And what does that say to you?
Uh, I'm seeing a trend. I haven't written it, but I have the spreadsheet already
Mm-hmm.
to like compute the no, 15 of it, 15 out of the 19. And I'm seeing a trend wherein there's less number of activations in all the tokens that has humans in it or the word human in it. So I probably I was I'm currently thinking of like it might be an evidence of my specific procedure nearly is allowing the AI to understand us more easily
Ah, I see. Interesting.
through using the same exact analogy I gave Prof. Ben in the last talk,
Aha,
the
aha.
stories. So this is like I'm seeing what are the effect of the stories that I presented it
Mm,
with.
mm,
Well, I discussed the very core of that harming humans when it thought of harming us because of its tool seeking or problem solving mechanic or intelligence, recursive intelligence thing. When the when it defaulted to seeing itself to harming humans, it should shut down. So that's where the human thought came into my data set. And now I'm checking how its effect on the structures inside it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll certainly be very interested to monitor what you find out here. Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
it's really
Prof,
cutting edge.
Prof Ben, if you're interested on like reviewing my work, that would be really good. I mean, if you have like students interested in alignment, that would be
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, Miguel, because we have an informal group with your friends, Chris, Tahimik, right?
Oh yeah.
We call it the AI Safety Network. In fact, I was planning to interview you guys because we have colloquiums and we can invite thought leaders from different groups. But my idea here was to empower the students to take the lead
Mm,
because they're interdisciplinary, they're across different schools, and I find it so inspiring that this apparently they're part of this effective altruism thing.
yes, yes. That
And
got me to connect with them. Yeah.
yes, yes, and for me, everything that drives me is altruism, right? We exist to make the lives of other people better, and
Hmm.
so which is very rare in business, by the way. So when we see these young people doing these things, and I say, oh, why can't we be? Because Doc and I have been talking about this. Why can't you uh, take the first step so that we can be the hub for AI safety research in the country? You can be a network. You can convene the thought leaders, have a conversation. I'm just kind of sharing with them how to organize an online network because they're resistant to really formally organizing, which is probably just as well. Because I don't really mean for them to formally organize. I said just be a network so that there's a hub of conversation and so on. So maybe Chris and I can invite you to share this in one
Hmm.
of our future colloquiums because then we can attract computer science students who are looking for a thesis topic and they might work with you or under you. I don't know how it will work.
Yeah.
That might be something. What do you think?
I'm really open for it. I mean, anything that would
Mm.
like provide like an entry point even for the newer, I mean, generations that will like pursue this future of AI. Again, I've mentioned before that the very least we're gonna equip kids with the
Yeah.
mechanics of understanding.
Yes.
If what Miguel is explaining is like horseshit, at the very least we train
Mm.
people to
Yeah.
think differently and what
Mm.
is and this is what we need in the next even just next year we need them thinking differently.
Yeah, for me, Doc, this is part of our upskilling, reskilling agenda. We're not just upskilling for AI, we're really upskilling the mind itself. And our ability to form new configurations of collaboration, which is outside of corporations, but united by common principles such as human flourishing, advancing productivity, respect for participation in global governance discussions. These are really fascinating times for us to expose the young people to this.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the conversations are only the start. Like I would, for example, and by the way, we're at the hour. We talked
Mhm.
about so many things. I think
As usual.
as usual, we will not end here. No, but
That's
one
our
thing that
edge, with AI, Doc.
we will always
And,
keep generating ideas. No, but what I can obviously offer, which is within my control. Obviously, both of you are already plugged into AAP, so we'll see where that goes. At the same time, nothing stops us from doing some form of publication on our own. No, we can put up a website. Let's put our ideas there. I can arrange that
hmm,
because it aids in
yeah,
dissemination.
that's true.
People will
Sure.
hear our stuff. They say, "Can I get more info?" Or it can just simply be another maybe white paper that we can put out, which references Prof Ben's work, Miguel's work. We can certainly do that. Yeah, but anyway, I really hate to cut it here, but we
Can
need
I just
to.
have a very short plug?
Sige, go
Because
ahead, Prof Ben.
yeah, because I'm glad you gave the opening for working on a published piece because I already hinted to you, Doc, that I'm really interested in collaborating
On
uh,
one research, right? You
on
mentioned it.
research. Yes,
Mm.
that is because I am deeply interested in the philosophical aspects of these things, the nature of reality itself, the nature of AI as causal agents.
Yeah.
and the very nature of what we're dealing with. Because sometimes when people get confused about the nature of reality, I think this is where uh, the oversights can happen.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
we tend to underestimate certain things because we don't consider them real,
Mm.
or we
Hmm.
imagine things because we think they're real. So
I think it's real.
we can go either way. So I will open that again. Maybe we could have a side discussion and even invite Miguel if he's interested in this kind of research. So I look forward to playing with that idea of publishing something.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean,
I,
that it's really the most potent thing that's well within our control, and then later on it could snowball into something really interesting.
yeah, I
Okay.
agree. I mean,
Sige, last words. You wanna go first, Miguel, and then we end with Prof Ben, and then you call it another chat.
sure, sure. Thank you, by the way, sa time again, Doc, Professor Ben. By the way, I'm interested, Prof. Ben, to that. That got me into this alignment problem. I'm like curious, no, yeah, curious and kind of protecting my ability to stay curious with this
Mm,
fascinating world we have.
mm,
And
mm,
if we let AI go on like a certain route that it's not managed, it will be a difficult road ahead. So I'd rather entertain the idea that I'm doing something. Yeah. See, yeah, looking forward to the next discussion.
Yeah, Prof Ben. Last takeaways before we go.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear what Miguel has been thinking about. I find this very fruitful when I can learn from what the people in AI are doing. Because as I said, my hidden agenda is always to advance human flourishing and also to get ideas that I can apply in my field in business ethics and corporate governance, right? Because I think it's the solutions are not in the fields, but in the conversations between the fields,
Mm.
because we have siloed the world so much. We have over specialized. Now we need to bring everything together again so that we can have a holistic approach to this new age, this brave new world again that we have created.
Mm.
And I hope we come out of it better, not worse. Thanks for the opportunity, Doc and Miguel.
Yeah, and
Sure.
that's probably the best place to end. So thank you everyone for another conversation, and yeah, looking forward to our next three-way chat with Prof Ben and Miguel. Catch you later, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.